Imagine not being able to read the paper because your hands were shaking. Imagine not being able to read newsprint as your world faded to black. The National Federation of the Blind, Newsline, Indiana. With your host, Lee Martin, and co-host, Florence Myers-McSwine.
We want to welcome you to this week's show of the National Federation of the Blind of Indiana. And I am so excited about some of the great things that are going on with this free audio information service with the National Federation of the Blind. This is a free service that allows people that are print challenged, those that are having certain forms of dyslexia, those that are blind, they can also, blind and deaf, can now use this free service. So there's anyone that's print challenged now has the tools to use the NFB Newsline service where you can read your local newspapers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can also read national publications such as the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the United Press International. You also have breaking news, which there are 17 magazines and breaking newspapers or publications and breaking news that you can read, such as the ABC, the BBC, the CBS, and a plethora of others that you can read throughout the day, where news is updated all day long, and you can keep your current news that you read previously in the day as well. So there are updates for all these different publications. And Florence, you want to talk a little bit about the magazines that we have and some of the devices?
Surely. Now, as far as the devices that we use to access the audio information service, of course, is the landline phone and the iPhone, the Android, digital player from Talking Book and Braille Library. There's also the Amazon Alexa, as well as your computer. Now, with the magazines, we have a load of magazines to choose from now. We have a kids' corner where there's 5 magazines for children. We also have magazines for people that love to cook, such as Best Recipes. There's Reader's Digest. There's Life Magazine. There's also Discover. There's ESPN. There is a lot of information, just depending on your lifestyle, what you enjoy reading. So, again, today we have as a special guest, Dr. Emily Hable, who is from Indianapolis Eye Care Center. She's coming back to talk about eye health and eye care, and just stay tuned.
If you or someone you know is visually impaired or print challenged, the National Federation of the Blind has a resource you need.
Wow, I scored a touchdown when I found sports on NFB Newsline.
I enjoy reading TV guide listings on NFB Newsline.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
We are the nation's blind. We read NFB Newsline.
It's free.
I am a blind vendor, and one of the things that I truly miss is reading Vending Times magazine.
Hoosiers can hear Indiana magazines, circulars, national magazines, and information from across the globe. Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
It is a fantastic service.
Subscribe free to NFB Newsline today.
Well, welcome to this segment of the National Federation of the Blind Newsline Indiana show. And this week, again, we have our special guest, Dr. Emily Hable, who is a assistant clinical professor at Indianapolis Eye Care Center. And Dr. Hable, thank you again for being on our show.
Thanks so much. I'm very happy to be here.
On our last show, we covered a lot of information about eye conditions that lead to blindness or lead to vision loss, and we covered a lot. Now, what we would like to do today is continue our conversation. But Dr. Hable, now with the Indianapolis Eye Care Center, can you tell us a little bit about the Indianapolis Eye Care Center and what's going on there?
Yeah, so our Indianapolis Eye Care Center is located downtown. We did move locations. So we were previously on Indiana Avenue on the canal, and now we are currently located at the Glick building, the Eugene and Maryland Glick building on Michigan Avenue, Michigan Street, sorry, on the Indiana University, Purdue University campus, so the IUPUI campus. We just moved there about a month ago. And it's been great to get to see a new location. Unfortunately, we were at our other location for a very long time, but moving upward and forward is always great. So we love our new place.
Yeah, and so do I. I had the opportunity to come over well, I want to say see your new location over at the new building, and it's quite a change. I've seen the Indianapolis Eye Care Center switch locations several times, as a matter of fact, because I've been a patient there for over 30 years. And I've seen people come and people go. And through it all, the Eye Care Center it's worked for me. And I love the people. I love the staff and people such as yourself with the passion that you have. Your bedside manner is wonderful, and thank you for what you do.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I love the clinic. I love the people that I work with. Our staff and our faculty are great, and our students are always fun to get to work with. And they always change over every couple months, but it's always really good to get to work with new students and to see their perspectives and get to see them learn. So it's great. Yeah.
Another thing I noticed over at the Glick building, they've got some safety measures in place, for COVID-19. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Definitely. So optometry was initially considered non-essential by the CDC. However, our clinic was still providing emergency care to patients who had urgent care needs, such as pink eyes, red eyes, all of that stuff, injury to the eyes. So even during the COVID closures, we were still seeing an occasional patient for those concerns. But our current precautions are that we're seeing half capacity of patients. Everyone must wear a mask when they come in. All of our staff and our faculty and our students wear masks to prevent the spread. So patients and ourselves are masked up, which is very important. We also clean everything excessively in between patients. We try to limit the amount of physical contact with patients, which is unfortunate because I love to shake everybody's hand, but I'm restraining myself. We are washing our hands before and after any procedures of any kind, with any interaction with any patients. We're making sure we wipe down everything in the room in between patients and after any procedures. We are limiting the patients within particular spaces. So even on check-in or in our optical, we're only allowing a couple people at a time to limit the spread of COVID, simply because it's a pretty serious condition and we don't want to pass it on to anyone. We still want to provide care, but keep everyone safe at the same time.
You speak on having half staff or half capacity at this time or for patients. How many members do you have on staff there at the Indianapolis High School?
Staff, we have 5 for our front desk. We have 2 opticians, and we have 2 techs in the back that do specialty testing. And then faculty, we have 8 faculty that come in sort of scattered throughout the week. Not everyone is in clinic on every single day. And so we have administrative time to catch up on all the paperwork that we always invariably have to do. And so We also end up having 11 students, but they each have their own exam room. And so they usually stay in their exam rooms when they're not seeing patients so as to prevent the spread. So unfortunately, I don't get to socialize as much, but it's for the safety of everyone.
Yes.
Now with this COVID-19, are there impacts or studies that show that COVID-19 you may be able to get COVID-19 through your eyes?
Yes, actually, within the tiers, there are potential viral shedding that can happen within the tier layer. So we have to be careful not to touch our eyes or our face, and then touch someone else's, of course. So that's definitely a big concern. There have been about 1 to 3% of cases of COVID that have had actually pink eye or red eye, which is also called conjunctivitis, where the virus ends up spreading to the eyes themselves and can cause inflammation, excessive tearing, watering, a lot of pain, a lot of light sensitivity. It basically is the virus within the eye itself. And it's fairly similar to most viral eye infections that people can get. Unfortunately, however, the course of it is sort of dependent upon the course that's in the body as well. So if you get a really bad cold, oftentimes people will also have a red eye. It's the same type of situation. There are some studies that show you can see markers or changes within the retina due to COVID if you have a vascular response. However, there are a very small percentage of people that end up having those changes, and it doesn't last. It doesn't cause any permanent damage or any permanent change to the vision. And when the front surface of the eye, the conjunctivitis infection resolves with the rest of the resolution of the virus, then you don't have any leftover side effects, thankfully.
Good, good. And that was a question that I was wondering about. What long-term effects COVID-19 might have on a person's vision.
Mm-hmm. And it's not permanent, so.
Wonderful. That's wonderful to know.
So we don't have to worry about, I hear people say, well, you might want to wear your sunglasses when you're out in public to prevent some of that. Have you heard that as being part of one of the safeguards?
I have not heard that specifically. I think that the each individual wearing a mask is actually the best way to reduce the spread, simply because of transmission. If 2 people are wearing masks, you get a transmission of about 1.7%, and that's going to help prevent spreading to even your eyes. But I mean, wearing sunglasses outside in the sun is just a great way to protect your eyes in general, and so I would definitely advocate for it, even if it's not preventing COVID within the eyes.
Okay, well, we're going to take a short pause, and we'll be right back after our commercial break with Dr. Emily Hable.
I'm Danny Wayne Beamer, Program Manager of the Elder Blind Program at the Will Center in Terre Haute, Indiana. I introduce the NFB Newsline to seniors in 13 southwestern counties in Indiana. I also utilize the NFB Newsline for my radio station public affairs shows. The NFB Newsline. Experience it today.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
We are the nation's blind, and we read NFB Newsline.
No more did I have to wonder about the rest of the story when disaster struck. I could open the local paper for that town and find out. And when I discovered that NFB Newsline could be a powerful tool for TV watching, listing all my favorite channels and what was on when, I was most definitely hooked.
Well, welcome back to our show with our guest, Dr. Emily Hable, who is a clinical professor at Indianapolis Eye Care Center. And Dr. Hable, during our break, we were just talking a little bit about retinitis pigmentosa. You said that your dad was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa. And can you tell us a little bit more about that? I know also that, it can actually affect many people in the family, and then sometimes it doesn't affect any. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, so retinitis pigmentosa can be caused by many different genes. The most common is a recessive a gene. So you have to have two of the same from the mother and the father to have the condition, and that's why many families will have the condition if it is passed from family down the line. And unfortunately, the younger you are to present with findings, or the further down the line you are, sometimes those symptoms happen much earlier or more severely. There are other ways of having the gene, such as in my father's case, which is a sporadic gene. And so he had a sporadic gene to cause the condition. Also, my uncle did as well. Oddly enough, to both have retinitis pigmentosa. However, my mother's side of the family didn't have any of that gene, and so my brother and I do not have it, and neither do my niece or my nephew. So no one else in our family really has it, simply because of the gene pathway.
I know that in my family, it's pretty dominant. I was diagnosed at 3, and they were looking for it earlier, but they saw the gene when I was 3 years old. So my family, it's from generation to generation. My grandfather, my dad, my brothers, my children. So it's just a question I had because I know of your interest and your passion for optometry due to retinitis pigmentosa in your family. After a person is diagnosed as being legally blind, how do you tell a patient that they're losing their sight?
That's a really good question. It's always a very difficult conversation to have with a patient. You try to express as much as you can to the patient while they're there, because sometimes they don't like to come back after finding out such a very difficult diagnosis. And so you try to cover all of the situation, explaining what's going on with the condition, as well as any potential measures that can be done to help prevent or change it. However, sometimes it's not preventable. Being very empathetic with the patient, you basically just explain, this is the level of vision that you have on this day. And based on the state standards, this is what that means. Oftentimes it's a very difficult conversation with patients simply because they don't want to accept it. They're basically grieving the loss of their vision and all of the things that they could do with their vision. It's fairly similar to when you have to tell a patient they can't drive anymore because they will be potentially unsafe. And that's a very, very tough conversation, simply because I come across as the bad guy often, as well as the one taking away their independence. However, I try to encourage my patients as much as possible as to the potential resources that are available, such as we talked about in the last session, such as Crossroads Easter Seals, the different resources within Indiana and Indianapolis, BOSMA, vocational rehabilitation, but also we discuss oftentimes, support groups or counseling that are potential options, especially if a patient is taking it very difficultly. We want to make sure that we are taking care not only of their vision as best as we can, but also their mental health and their systemic health. And those are really important factors to take into consideration, especially with such a difficult diagnosis. I mean, you have to do the same thing within any field when you get a very difficult diagnosis, such as cancer or some type of systemic condition. You have to approach it from a very understanding, compassionate perspective. I like to say we put on many hats when we are in our exam rooms. Not only are we clinicians, but we're also sort of counselors in those situations, because we have to account for all of the mental health changes that happen within a person with those particular diagnoses.
Well, Doctor, I tell you, I really appreciate what you just stated. From my own experiences being in that chair and being told that I would never be able to see again. You know, I lost my sight through what they were calling scleritis, which the inflammation of my eyes detached the retinas, and I was never able to see again. And by the way, that'll be 21 years, the 29th of this month, that I've lost my sight, and that I was told that. And at that point in time, as a patient, I just did not know what to do. I was like stunned. I was stunned, and the doctor that I had, I knew that I was losing more and more sight, and I was going to doctors all over the country. And I find oftentimes people do the same thing. I went to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, Chicago. I went to a number of places, but the bedside mannerisms were really good in most places. But the final doctor I went to, what he told me after sending me through a very excruciating, I guess, trying to find out what was going on with my eyes. He just pat me on the back and said, "Well, that's it for you, bub. You'll never see again," and walked right on out the office. And that was a very hard time. And basically, I had to go through the VA, Hines, once again, to regain some security about myself, so that I could be encouraged to move forward in life. And I'd like to say to our listeners and viewers that there is life after blindness. And there's a lot of resources out there, such as Dr. Hable has spoken on, but you can also go to our NFB Newsline site, nfbnewsline-in.org. And when you visit there, you can go to our state information channel, and you'll find a lot of resources there to assist you throughout your blindness.
The National Federation of the Blind knows that blindness is not the characteristic that defines you or your future. Every day we raise the expectations of blind people because low expectations create obstacles between blind people and our dreams. You can live the life you want. Blindness is not what holds you back.
If you or someone you know is visually impaired or print challenged, the National Federation of the Blind has a resource you need.
I use NFB Newsline when reading Hammond Northwest Times.
Using NFB Newsline, I read the Christian Science magazine.
Dad, you read Jerusalem Post too.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
Live the life you want. Read NFB Newsline.
It's free.
Well, welcome back to the conclusion of our show. Now, Dr. Hable, final questions for you this show. What about supplements, vitamin A and other supplements that people may use for eye health? Are there myths, or give us some information on that?
Yeah, definitely. So there are definitely some supplements that are potentially helpful for patients. One, for example, is an ARIDS 2 formulation for macular degeneration patients that has been shown with clinical studies to slow the progression of the condition, but minorly. There's also some suggestion that high doses of vitamin A help reduce the progression of conditions like retinitis pigmentosa. However, there are also a lot of other vitamins and minerals that are out there that sort of tout that they're good for eye health and all of that. But unfortunately, there's not a lot of FDA or clinical studies to suggest that they're actually beneficial. And so you have to be careful about what you are taking. Definitely talk with your eye care provider or with your healthcare provider to make sure that it's actually something that you should be taking, because a lot of it is your body just can't process really high doses of vitamins and minerals that it doesn't really need. A varied diet is actually probably the best way to make sure you get all of those vitamins and minerals that you actually need, aside from those two that I had mentioned previously.
Okay, well, Doctor, I know a lot of people from different segments of our society think that marijuana is a good treatment for eye conditions. Could you expound on that a little bit?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it is not FDA approved for treatment of glaucoma, simply because the active ingredient that is helpful for lowering the pressure in the eyes is THC, and that actually has, the psychoactive drug part of it can lower the pressure in the eyes, except it's only a very minute amount, very, very small, and you'd have to be basically high the entire time that you're trying to lower the pressure. Unfortunately, drops and surgical treatments are far better than that option. And so I would recommend those instead of marijuana, simply because of the side effects that go into smoking, as well as the other ingredients in it that could potentially, they're not safe for driving. You have to be careful with different, drugs. And so definitely, recommending the drops and the surgical options because it does a far better effect. There are some clinical studies into sort of CBD oil and its benefits for patients with chronic pain or cancer, and there's some actual potential benefit there. CBD is the part that has a calming effect on the system, and that isn't part of the glaucoma treatment. That's just a separate, the oil part of extracted from the plant. And so there's some potential benefit for that. However, the studies are still a bit inconclusive. So I would definitely talk with your primary care provider to double check on some of those things just before you jump in all the way with those. Unfortunately, I, as an eye care provider, cannot recommend them for glaucoma at this time.
Okay, well, there you have it, viewers and listeners. We've had a great show today, and Dr. Hable, we just want to thank you for coming on once again and sharing so much knowledge and information to everyone. So just thank you, and once again, everyone, follow the scrolls on the screens, those that you can see, and those that you can't see, there'll be information regarding the Indianapolis Eye Clinic. So thank you once again, Doctor, and we look forward to talking with you soon. And God bless you, and may you continue to be a blessing to so many people in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So stay tuned for our show next week, and we look forward to you being entertained with some great information on our next National Federation of the Blind Newsline Indiana show. Take good care and take good care of yourselves.
The National Federation of the Blind, Newsline, Indiana. For more information, go to nfb-in.org or call 855-963-6476. That's 855-963-6476. The National Federation of the Blind encourages you to live the life you want.